Hello and welcome to the Vista Process, 5 steps to discover the Africa-focused business for you. Now, I'm really excited to bring this to you, and I hope that you find this process as rewarding and useful as I did when I went through it a couple of years ago now. So here's a little bit about me. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Rashida Abdullahi, and I am a lawyer by training and an entrepreneur at heart, having founded Strand Sahara, which is an online legal support service for Africa-focused startups and SMEs. Now, I started my legal career 10 years ago at the global law firm Hogan Lovells, which is a great firm, one of the largest in the world. And during my time at that firm, I had the great privilege of spending a lot of time working with clients who were operating in Africa, all across the continent, and helping them in relation to those operations, whether it was representing them in legal disputes, advising in relation to potential collaborations, whether that was through a joint venture or acquisition, and also providing updates on the investment landscape, what it's like to invest in Africa and how they can protect their investments. But over the years, I couldn't help but feel that the expertise and skills and knowledge that I had gained would be more impactful if I focused that on those smaller businesses, those who don't yet have access to that international level expertise, but who absolutely have the potential to become the corporate giants of tomorrow. And more than that, I really wanted to have an impact on the continent itself. I wanted to make sure I was working towards increasing opportunities and the life chances for Africa's people. So that's why I started Strand Sahara, and the process that I went through from leaving my role at Hogan Lovells to starting Strand Sahara is what I want to share with you during this program. Now, you'll see that a few other logos on the slides there. Those are just some organisations that I have worked with or presented to in the past. And there are a few awards listed on the slide as well. I'm most proud of the awards where I've been given over the years for my work in Africa, whether it's working with non-profit organisations to provide more opportunities to African lawyers, all the way through to the work that I've been doing to promote Africa and investment on the continent. So let's get started. Now that you know a bit about me, let's get going. So as you know, we're going to be walking through the VISTA process. And this process is a 5-step process, and it might have surprised some of you when you saw the components of it. I will have to admit that when I was going through this journey myself, I hadn't realised just how much personal reflection was required in order for me to get to a point where I knew the business I wanted to start. But it absolutely is the case that we need to really understand who we are as people, as individuals, in order to make sure that we're building a business that is perfectly suited to us, our capabilities, our skills, our values. And that's important from the prospect of longevity and making sure that you can withstand the rough times that often come with starting a business, let alone a business in an emerging market. And that's important because running a business, starting a business is not straightforward. There are many things that can and do go wrong, or not quite as you would have planned. It's not the same as working in a job, certainly not in the professions like the legal profession, where actually your career trajectory is very clearly laid out from the start. You know exactly what you need to do to get promoted through the ranks. Often it's just by virtue of the number of years that you've been practicing, but it's very clear what you need to do to progress. Now, unfortunately, we don't have that level of clarity when it comes to running a business. Rather than being able to set a plan and then follow that plan, it's more about having an idea of the direction that you want to get in, that you want to go in, and then making small moves that push you further in that direction. So it might be that you don't necessarily take a linear path. You may have to pivot slightly or change your plans in order to deal with obstacles that might come into your way. But as long as you're directionally moving in the right path, towards the right path, then you're on the right. You're doing the right thing. And the way for you to know whether or not you are on the right path and moving in the right direction is by having a clear understanding of where you want to go and who you are. Which is why I think the first 3 steps of the VISTA process are so much focused on reflection, vision, that's understanding your why, insights, which is all about understanding your value, what is it that you have to offer the world based on your current experiences and expertise. Then skills, and this again, it's about reflection. It's looking at you and your strengths. What are the things that you're really good at? What are the things that light you up when you do them? We need to understand that in order to make sure that your business can be built in such a way to enable you to do those things every day, and not the things that you don't enjoy or that you're not so good at, because that will just drain you. And then we move on to the more market-focused activities, looking at your target. So here we'll be learning a bit more about the different markets on the continent and which one might be right for your offering. And then finally putting together the action plan, which of course is important, but it's the first step in you making those moves towards making your business, your dream business, a reality. So let's get started with the very first step in the VISTA process, vision. Now, as you can see on this slide, this is all about creating a business that excites and fulfills you. And that starts with knowing who you are and what you want. We're all different. We all have a different idea of success, and we all have different values. And actually, if you want to build a business that's going to stand the test of time and provide you with the life that you want, it needs to be made in alignment with those values. So the 3 outcomes that I want you to walk away with after this analysis of vision are: 1, clarity on what your core values are. Now, your core values are simply the belief system that guides your behavior and your actions. Whether you know it or not, you do have core values, and whenever you're presented with an opportunity, a choice, these are the things that drive you. These are the things that will either make you enjoy those opportunities and jump for them, or get filled with dread when these things come up, because it's just not right for you. So we'll go out of our way to protect these values, and that's how you can identify whether or not something is a core value of yours. Some values are nice to have. I'm sure all of you will agree that being fit and healthy is a great value, and we all absolutely would love to be fit and healthy. But is it one of your core values? Are you really that committed to your fitness? Now, the real test for this is something that I learned working with my coach, Rina Dayal, and it's set out really well in her book. But it's all about putting yourself in a position where it would be particularly difficult for you to live that value. So let's go with the fitness example. Now, let's say you say that fitness is your core value. Now, if that's the case, it would mean that if, for example, you had worked an incredibly hard week in the office, doing a few all-nighters, and were incredibly tired, and Saturday comes along and all you want to do is pull the duvet over your head and catch up on all of the sleep that you've missed through the week. But Saturday mornings are when you tend to go to the gym, and you have a set regime that you do every week to keep up your fitness. Now, if fitness was your core value, you would get up out of bed and go to the gym. And that's because it would pain you more to miss that session than it would to lose the sleep that you have over the past week. Now, I know that I'm not about to jump out of bed in order to go to the gym, as much as I would love to think that that's what I would do. So I know that fitness, whilst I believe it's important, is not one of my core values. And I hope you can use that example to help you distill and get down to what your core values really are. Not the nice to haves, but the must haves for you. The things that you absolutely must do. The things that you will go out of your way to make sure you can live every day. Okay, now after your values, we'll be talking about your goals. Now this is always a really exciting exercise because I love thinking about the future. But here I'm going to encourage you to imagine yourself 10 years from now living your best life, and then to really put some clarity around what that picture looks like. So I'll be asking you questions about, what are you doing? Who are you with? How does your work week stack up? What does it look like in terms of the number of hours you work a day and where you do that work? Do you have a home office? Do you work in a city? What does it look like? I want to know every detail about that picture of yourself living your best life, because once we know what that vision is, then we can put in place the goals that you'll need to achieve in order to get there. And so finally, we'll be looking at your vision statement. Now this is where we look outside of yourself and at the wider world and think about the impact that you want to have. Now this doesn't necessarily mean in your business, but that is what we're aiming at here with this particular course. But the idea is that all of us want to have some sort of impact in the world. You've come here into this group because you particularly want to have an impact in Africa, and there are so many problems that need solving on the continent. And we're not just talking about the really trivial things, really fundamental problems. And as we think about what impact we want to make, I will be encouraging you to think about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the global goals, and align yourself to one or two or three of them that really matter to you. So that's an overview of what we're going to be doing under vision. But let's get started with looking at your core values. So as I mentioned, your core values are things that are non-negotiable. They're so important to you that you're willing to make sacrifices in order to live them. You will get out of bed when you're tired to hit the gym if fitness is that important to you. And when you do something that's at odds with your core values, you feel dread and unease. So what might that look like? Let's see, if fairness is a value, a core value in your life, like it is for me, it's one of the reasons I decided to become a lawyer, then you won't be happy with people breaking the rules to win. And I certainly, that really triggered me when I was in the office and we were dealing with an opponent who were using really shady tactics to try and win. I really was bothered by that. Not so much that, they were trying to win and we were obviously in a competitive environment, but more that they would use such disingenuous tactics in order to win, that winning meant more to them than having integrity. That really got to me, and it's because fairness is one of my core values. I'm going to ask you to limit your list of values to 5 at a maximum, but 3 if you can. And that's because, as I said before, it's really easy for us to pick loads of values because there are lots of things that we believe are important and that we would like to have in our lives. But the truth is that if we really force ourselves to, we can find those values which are really core and important to us. And once you know what those ones are, it will make it so much easier for you to then live your values, which means using them as your guiding stars. You can make choices and decisions knowing what it is that you need to have in your life, or the rules that you can't break in order for you to feel happy, the things that you really don't want to compromise on because it will impact on your happiness. So giving yourself the tool, the knowledge of knowing what those values are with absolute clarity, the top ones that you must live by in order to fulfill and will live a fulfilling and exciting life that works for you, is such a gift. and it's something that I'm so glad I did. It's given me a level of clarity that I never had before, and it means that everything is so much easier because I have an external compass, if you like, to help me determine whether or not making one move or another would benefit me the most. So what I want to encourage you to do is to look at this next slide, which is going to contain a whole load of potential core values. I'd like you, when we move to that slide, to just pause this video, have a look through the values list, and pick out those words which jump out at you, the things that really speak to you and resonate with you as your values. Now, you're probably going to end up with a list of 10 or maybe 15 or even 20 of these words. So you'll have to spend some time really whittling down which ones are your core values. Now, there are a number of ways you can do this. If you have a shorter number of maybe 10, you might try to put them in order of importance. That could be a good way of doing it. If you've got a really big, long number, a long list of 20 or more, then it might be that you go through a process of elimination and you say, okay, if I could only have one of this choice of two, which one would it be? And I think that will help you to get that clarity on the ones that are really your non-negotiable core values. If in doubt, go back to that example. What would you get out of bed for? What would you quit your job for? What would you sacrifice the most for? Those will really help you to figure out which ones are key. So take some time now, pause the video, have a look through the list, pick out those words which jump out at you, and then try to whittle it down to 5 at the most core non-negotiable values for you. So how was that? Did you manage to come up with your 5 key non-negotiable core values? Don't worry if you haven't. This is something that will take some time for many people. You may need to sleep on it to really give yourself the time and space to think about which ones truly are non-negotiable for you. And it might mean that you need to really put yourself in different scenarios to figure out, when push comes to shove, what are the things that really are most important to you. I'm very happy to share with you my values, and what I've done to try and make them easier to remember is ensure that they all start with the letter F. So here are my 5 core values, the 5 things I really give an F about. Fun, fierce, free, family, fair. Now by fun, I simply mean that I must have fun in everything I do. Whether it's at work, joking with colleagues, having a sense of humour about things, or at home having fun with my boys. Fun is so important to my life that I can't do without it. At the times when I've had to work in solitude on a very serious piece of legal work for long periods of time have really drained me, because that sense and need for having fun is so important. So next was fierce. Now I mean fierce in the sense that we've come to know it thanks to Beyonce, in that I have a real desire to do things to the best of my ability, to really achieve a high standard, whether that's in work or play. It's something that I strive for throughout my life. I always want to be the absolute best I can be, and I push myself quite hard. So that's what I mean by fierce. And of course it starts with an F, so it's much better for me to remember. And next we had free. Now free or freedom, it's the same thing, but the idea is that I need to have autonomy over my time and the ability to pursue the work that I believe is important. And so freedom, if anything, it's I think why I've gone down the entrepreneur route more than anything. I felt very limited in my corporate role, limited in my time, how I spent my time, the work that I was doing, the way that I did that work, who I worked with, who I worked for, and it really grated on me that I didn't have the ability to have more choice in relation to those things. Now, I was living without the freedom that I needed, but it was having an impact on me that was unsustainable, which is why I ended up leaving that role. And so now that I've been able to build a business, I understand the freedom that I need, and I understand that I need to build it in a way that I can maintain that freedom. Okay, next was family. Now, family, I believe, is going to be a core value for many people. It often is. It is for me simply because I know that as a person, I would not be okay if my family were not happy, if there was a problem, if we weren't talking to each other, anything like that. They mean the absolute world to me, and having a good relationship with them and making sure that they are well is something that's so important that I would sacrifice pretty much anything for it. And then finally, fair. Now, I mentioned this already, but fairness is something that's so important to me. Whenever I feel that something unfair has happened, it gets to me in a way that I can't deny, and I can't shake off. And as I said, I think it's one of the reasons why I decided to become a lawyer. In particular, I wanted to be an advocate to fight for people's rights, because I just felt an acute sense of unfairness in the world and wanted to do what I could to right that and to make sure that people had access to the legal support that they needed to enforce and understand what those rights are. So those are my values, and those are what I live my life by now. Those are what I use to make decisions on a daily basis and to build my business. It would be wonderful to know what your values are. So please do, once you've had a chance to figure out what they are, share them within the group. I think it would be really great and empowering for all of us to be really proud of our values, and to see that we are all very different. We'll all probably in the whole agree that the same things are important, but the things that really are top and the core values for each of us will likely be quite different. So it'd be really interesting to see what yours are. I'm also very pleased that I'm going to have for you a short video by my coach, the coach who helped me through my period of transition from the corporate world to entrepreneurship, who will be talking more about values. And her book, The Brilliance Quotient, is another great source of getting support for figuring out what your values are and then using them to build your life going forward in a way that's in alignment with those values and will therefore be more fulfilling and a great way to live for you. So that's it for today. During the course of this week, we will go through the other elements of vision. You'll remember that is setting your goals and then finally building your vision statement. But for today, I would really love you to focus on your values, because it's such an important foundational first step that you need to get through in order to be able to build the business that's perfect for you. Until next time, bye Dream Team.